I'm Mark Reed-Edwards, marketing leader at HFS. Welcome to this HFS videocast of a special fireside chat between HFS CEO and Chief Analyst Phil Fersht and Mike Ettling, CEO of Unit 4. Mike says that from his first leadership role in the Boy Scouts to exec positions in the tech industry, his career has revolved around elevating, engaging, and enabling people. Leading the discussion, as always, is Phil Fersht. Phil founded HFS in 2010. Recently, the Analyst Observatory at the University of Edinburgh recognized HFS as a leading global analyst firm, ranking HFS second in influence over enterprise buyers and second for engagement with enterprise buyers. So let me hand it over to Phil to get the discussion with Mike underway. Phil, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I think it's been a couple of years since we did one of these interviews, Mike. That was before the day we did video interviews. I think we did them orally and wrote them up. But tell us what's happened to you guys in the last. How's the world changed in the last couple of years for you, both personally and with your professional company?
Well, how's the world changed in the last 3 years? I think we could talk for a long time on that, Phil. So maybe I should start with the most important stuff. Springboks won the World Cup again. Liverpool's about to win the quadruple, fingers crossed. So my sports teams are in a good place, which is great. I think, I would say I've spent, actually last week was my 3rd year anniversary at Unit 4 as CEO of Unit 4. And I was actually reflecting on the last 3 years and thinking that kind of when I started out, I was not expecting the 3 years we've had. Global pandemic, war in Europe again, very, very challenged economic environment worldwide, global talent shortages, and this phenomenal kind of world we're heading into around high inflation again. So you put all of that together, and it's been a pretty interesting 3 years, which, as a leader, I feel I've actually probably learned more in the last 3 years than in the last 30 years.
Yeah, and how's this changed you as a leader in a company? Do you feel like you've changed your own philosophy, your own style? Do you think you've changed a lot as a result?
It's a really interesting question. I don't think it's changed my style. I think it's amplified my style, is the way I would put it. I've always had a view that people centricity, people first, and they look after your people, they'll do great things for your customers. I've always believed that. I think what we've seen over the last few years is that has absolutely come into play, and the success Unit 4 has had over the last 3 years, I think, is singularly down to that factor. We put a lot of effort into looking after our people, doing different things for our people during the pandemic. And we started out with a premise as a leadership team when this happened that we would not make people redundant. So our approach wasn't about how many people we could let go to protect the company. The approach was, how do we keep all our people through this pandemic to protect the company? So I think it's amplified, my perspective on that aspect of leadership. And I think the other thing which is really important is that we're going through two phenomena now in terms of global dynamics, which I don't think anyone has ever experienced. So, the global talent shortage, nobody has ever experienced, because we've always been able to geographically arbitrage talent. And now we have a universal shortage in every country. And then I think the move to inflation is also very unique in the sense that, I was born into a high inflation world. I remember my first car lease being at 17%. But none of us, unless you may be 105, have lived through low inflation to high inflation shift. So this transition phase is actually very tricky and difficult, and there isn't a textbook because no leaders have ever experienced it. So I think we are in interesting times in terms of leadership, because there's not a lot you can go back and say, well, there was a playbook 20 years ago, there's a playbook one can use. One's got to figure it out and navigate it. And that really brings good leaders to the fore.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point about, we used to live with high interest rates, high inflation growing up. So this has finally come back to haunt us after many years of not having that. So, but it does change the whole paradigm of, people and work and what we can do to be effective moving forward with talent. One thing I've seen isn't so much a great resignation. It feels like more of a great hurry going on. Clients trying to get their stuff into the cloud faster than ever, realization you can't exist with clunking, siloed on-premise operations like you used to. Deals that should have been done 10, 15 years ago now finally getting done. And then at the same time, people in a hurry to maybe reevaluate their career values and what they're doing. But getting onto the whole talent thing, I mean, we've seen most volatility at the more sort of the Gen Z level. Kids today struggle to get on the housing ladder. Their values are slightly different than maybe we had 20 years ago. And hey, they're looking at different priorities in life. But how would you assess from the perspective you've gained, especially recently, how are the values changing at the sort of the employee level, and what are you doing to address that?
Yeah, so just firstly, picking up on your point about in a hurry, I think you're absolutely right about that. And, I used the phrase a little while ago, which I said, there isn't a great resignation. What we're seeing is the great acceleration, because everything we're seeing has been done in the past. People have always thought about, where do I want to go with my career? Do I still want to do this job? Do I, self-reflection as to what I want to do. Companies have always said, okay, we got to get to the cloud. But what you're seeing now is, particularly with what happened with the pandemic, was people were able to do that en masse simultaneously all around the world during the luxury of lockdown, sitting back and thinking about what I want to do in life. So you're seeing this massive acceleration of those decisions. And I think that's what's translating into the outcome being a lot of resignations and a lot of talent shortage. And I think you're seeing the same in business. People are saying, well, we can't be in this situation again. So how do we get in the cloud? How do we get to that ideal end game architectural environment as quickly as possible? Now, how does that play out in terms of the talent in our organization? Interestingly, as I look over the last 3 years at Unit 4, we are becoming a younger organization. So if I look at the average age of people we're hiring versus the average age of people leaving, it's definitely skewing to a younger generation. And that's not by design. There's no kind of edict in the company of hire younger people. It's just naturally how, the marketplace is shaking out. And we don't see any sort of alarming trends generation to generation. What we do see as our biggest issue is time bands. So the number of years people are in the company. So our biggest attrition is people between 3 and 5 years in the company. So people come, they join the journey, they get through the first, let's say what I call the honeymoon first phase, adding value. And then it's in that 3 to 5 year period where people are really starting to reflect on their careers. And then once somebody stays longer than 5 years, they stay pretty lengthy time after that. And we don't see a generational kind of overlay on that data when we look at our attrition data and our retention data. So for us, it's more about, what are we not doing, or what can we do better to encourage our people who are here for at least 3 years that they actually can have a longer opportunity with us. I also think the other thing which is really important in today's kind of talent dynamic is your alumni, and the focus you need to put on alumni as an extended part of your organization. I remember saying this years ago in a previous life, that, you know, why should we think of our organization as bounded by salaried employees? Why shouldn't the boundaries be the temps, the contractors, the alumni, the broader organization? And why shouldn't we look at that as business development, as sources of future recruitment? You know, so do companies, one of the things companies can do is, do you offer your alumni? A lot of companies offer their employees an incentive to recruit people, bring people on board. Well, why not offer your alumni an incentive to bring people on board and recruit people on board? So I think the big thing in this world right now is experimentation from a leadership perspective, because there just isn't the definitive playbook, because the scenario we find ourselves in has never happened before in most organizations and globally. So as leaders, we have to experiment. You know, I think any leader who thinks, well, I did this 5 years ago, I'm going to do it again, or I did this last year, I'm going to do it again, I think is doomed. I think, you know, the leaders who are going to do experimentation a lot and try different things, you know, and they'll find the thing that works is, you know, is going to work. It's going to work the best. You know, my one daughter's a fan of Phineas and Ferb, and there's the mad scientist called Doofenshmirtz in it. It's like we all need to be Doofenshmirtzes experimenting at the moment.
That's a great line. I might use that. And you've been out traveling a lot lately. Obviously, the world seems to have opened up very quickly. Seems like a lot of people are happily showing up for conferences and offsites, but not so much the office anymore. Do you think well, we're all becoming mad scientists and experimenting how we want to work, or do you think at some point this is going to calm down and we'll get back to some type of stable work environment situation that we can all function well with?
Yeah, I think I think it's stabilizing quite quickly. I also have an hypothesis that says the more balance we can get into people getting together again in person, the more positive impact it will have on attrition in terms of reducing attrition. Because I think it's very hard for, you know, when you hang out at the office, you have the conversation and, you know, you grab the cup of coffee with Phil, we chat about what you did on the weekend. That kind of builds my connection to the organization, you know, and when somebody pings me up and says, hey, Mike, do you want to go do this role? It's like, well, I enjoy having a chat with Phil on a Monday morning, you know, and maybe I don't because I kind of like my environment. When my environment is this, you know, Zoom and Teams, it's very hard to have that connection. You know, you're just a 2D character with headphones on. So I actually think I think it's got to get back. The pendulum's got to swing to a stabilization. I always had a view from the start, because we in September 2020 already, we introduced our flexible working policy, which was all about flexibility, not about either or. You know, not about stay at home and work or come back to the office full time. It was all about, we want you to feel flexible. We don't want you to feel the guilt of presenteeism, you know, nor do we want you to feel, you know, the guilt of I'm at home and should I be working because I'm looking after my kids and, you know, waiting for a delivery. We want you to feel comfortable in your skin about flexibility because we trust you to get the job done. So we went to that model very early where we stopped in people's employment contracts, tagging them to an office. And, you know, I think organizations have to do that. You know, I've seen organizations go from early pronouncements around, we're never going to go back to the office and we all got to come back to the office. And I think it's not either or. I absolutely think it's not either or. I think what people want and absolutely don't want to give up, which people have got they've got very comfortable with and they value it over the last 2 years, is flexibility. But that flexibility can be in a nice balanced work scenario where you're doing some days at home and you're coming into the office the other days. And that's what we're striving to get to and to get back to as quickly as possible at Unit 4.
Okay. How has this changed the Unit 4 business in terms of what your clients are asking for, the types of solutions that you're putting at them, and where this company is going? Has it had a market effect on the changes to particularly companies that you deal with in public sector, professional services, etc., education?
Yeah, so I think what we have seen, definitely the demand for digital solutions and digitizing, and to use that word, it has increased. And everyone is now thinking, how do I get to a more digital, integrated kind of environment? The only industry we saw kind of slow down in terms of the space we operate in, which is more of the back office, was education, because during the pandemic, most education institutions were scrambling to make sure the front office was digitized and the learning was digitized. But now we're seeing that pendulum swing back where that's been done, and the institutions are saying, well, we need to sort the back office out as well. But I think the single biggest shift we're doing, and not we doing, but we're seeing in the market, and what we now really focusing on, and you saw us launch this at our last customer event, is what we call the enterprise mesh. So, we believe organizations are spending a lot of money now as everyone is charged into the cloud and everything is now off premise. Now a lot of money is being spent in trying to keep all these off premise solutions connected. And we think there's, in a typical mid-size organization, which is our customer, so we don't play in enterprise, but mid-market, the typical mid-market organization is spending, the research we did said just over €1 million a year on the manual jiu-jitsu, Control C, Control V integration, whether it's people, whether it's services companies doing integration type things. So we think there's a really big potential, because that's fine maybe in the enterprise world, but in the mid-market, you want to put in an ERP and you want it to connect. You want it to connect to your CRM, to your credit validation tool, to your banking payments tool. You want it automatically to connect. So we think this is going to be the next big thing. We have packaged it in terms of what we call the mesh, where you can buy, with our ERP, you can buy mesh packs, which have these integrations pre-done, all API based, and we will maintain them like a product, part of the software product. And I think that's where the next big wave of focus is going to be, particularly in the mid-market space, because companies cannot get to the true value unless this is done. And I think the other big aspect of this is not just technical integration, of sending a file from A to B. This is technical workflow and data integration, of saying, well, once the record's established in Salesforce, that's the primary data source. It then feeds into ERP to set up the record. It then sets up the project. It then feeds back into payroll. And very clear definitions around what's primary data, what's secondary data, who sets it up, who owns it. That's what we're doing. And I think that's the next big thing in mid-market ERP.
And how do you find, as you look at scaling this type of model, are you relying more on organic growth for your own like first wave solution services capabilities, or are you looking more to partner with SIs and sort of other BPOs, other services firms?
Yeah, so I think a few things. Firstly, partnering is absolutely fundamental to how we grow our business. And we actually on a pretty focused drive to recruit more partners at the moment. And we're looking for partners who actually have good customer relationships in the segments we want to do business in, which we have a good solution for and can help us enter those segments in different geographies. So that's really important to us. The second thing is we're looking for partners who can take our platform and help build applications on it, through our extension kit and our extensibility offerings. And then, of course, yes, we always will need SI partners, but as we move more and more into true cloud, more standardized implementations, that SI work shrinks and shrinks all the time. And the other side of that equation, the application extensions, those things, increase. So I think the big challenge for us, and I would say we are the sort of typical on-prem to cloud software company transformation, is that the partner network has to transform as well, has to shift, because gone are the days of how big and complex can we make the implementation, and how much can we customize the solution that it's not recognizable anymore. Right. To how do we get standard, fast, rapid deployment, integrated, all this data working perfectly and do all the change management so that we aren't customizing. You've got a solution which just keeps upgrading every quarter. So yeah, partners are really important for us. Acquisitions are also going to be important as we move forward. That was part of the reason for doing the transaction with TA and bringing in a new investor. We see a big part of our growth story over the next 3 years being M&A and acquiring companies, which will kind of fit into our ecosystem, in a very strategic way.
Interesting, very, very good. Okay, so I think you've set the stall out well. I do like this industry mesh capability, and anyone watching this should go to the Unit 4 website. It is a very impressive website, I have to say, very colorful and very informative. So well done with that. Better than most that I go to. But yeah, final question for you, Mike, is we talked about inflation, a pandemic, a war in the European mainland, kids with very different focuses on their jobs and careers. What do you think we're going to be talking about in another 2 years? I mean, when we look back to, now we look forward to, what do you think the conversation is going to be?
Wow, that's a tough question. I mean, if you follow the news today, I guess we've moved on now because the conversation's all about Twitter and Elon Musk. But I think if I had that answer, I would be, I'd be extremely wealthy in terms of predicting that. But I think a couple things are going to still be subjects which are enduring. I think for me, and this is kind of overlaid with a strong kind of personal belief. I think one of the things we have to keep tackling as human beings is just quality of life and poverty. With the technology, I always say to myself, with the technology we have as a society, we have no excuse for poverty. Because I think the technology we have should enable us to eliminate poverty on the planet. So I think that is still, for me, probably going to be the biggest single topic, which we have to get our heads around. And I think that's the master topic, the overarching topic. I think things like the climate and sustainability of the planet and those kind of things are the topics which hang off that. And all of those subtopics, kind of sort themselves out if we can solve the big topic of, poverty on the planet. I think technology has a major role to play in that. So I think that's going to be a topic which is going to be top of mind in all societies around the world for the next, couple of years.
Good. Well, thanks very much. I really enjoyed it. It's great seeing you again. And now we're all traveling. Hopefully we can actually grab a pint or a glass of wine or something. So
sounds good.
I know we've come close to it a couple of times. So let's try and make that happen. Yeah.
Sounds good.
This was a great discussion. To learn more about HFS, head over to hfsresearch.com, where you can view most of our research for free. Plus, we have a growing library of videocasts just like this that you can take with you wherever you go. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next HFS videocast.